Welcome to From the Mezzanine, a film podcast. I'm Matt, and that is Chuck, and this is episode number 53. We're recording on Halloween night, and as such, we've got a number of spooky selections for your holiday. Some are downright scary, others are scary bad, and one is scary because it gets a little too real about economic inequity. Before any of that, though, we've got a healthy amount of news. And of course, our main event is a review of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, where we will talk about all 8 episodes tonight. And because of that, we've got a lot to get through, so I'm going to throw it right to you, Chuck.
Oh, goddamn. There is a lot to talk about. I've never, watched this much. I've watched this show, each episode, at least 2 to 3 times. That is how enmeshed I have gotten into this experience. And really looking forward to talking about it. But yeah, like as you kind of alluded to, a lot on the plate this week, and a lot of it is really topical. We're kind of closing the circle on a number of different narratives that have been ongoing in our conversations over the last year. But this is one that we maybe didn't expect to have, and it's namely that there's something really going on with The Witcher. We first kind of got a hint of it because there was an interview that was given by the showrunner of the X-Men animated series. And that was what initially prompted me to make this news topic, but then we got the news that our man playing Geralt of Rivia was going to be leaving. And we take that as a hint that he's going to be doing Man of Steel 2. He's reinvesting in being Superman, so there's not enough time to do Geralt of Rivia, season after season. He's got to be at, Superman, peak at all times now. But I guess just to circle back to that initial article, what was the gist of that? Did you read the actual interview? Or did you?
I did.
Okay. Because initially I just relied on, what the tabloids, pieced from it. But there was one pertinent section of it that has brought everyone at least talking about this particular aspect of how TV is made these days. I guess I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, it's I won't reiterate the quote, but because you put it up there, yeah. But I find that this quote that's going around specifically, I pretty much agree with, unequivocally. As far as you should be hiring somebody who is a fan to write these types of shows, these fantasy shows, these sci-fi shows, these comic book shows. And at the very least, if they're not a fan, somebody who's open to becoming a fan. And I don't know, I just feel like this happens in so many industries, whether we're talking about, comic books or writing about video games or writing these sci-fi TV shows, fantasy shows, but it seems like these people go to all these colleges, these NYU and Vassar, and they get their writing degrees, and they all with the intention of becoming the next writer at Rolling Stone, or the next person to write the next big Oscar-winning screenplay or the next Pulitzer Prize-winning book. But eventually they kind of all get filtered down to these jobs that I guess are sometimes considered less than, but it's almost as if they're taking that out on it's like they're saying, I have a lot of important things to say. I have a lot of political ideas and social ideas and beliefs that I, would have gotten out there if I would have ended up a more successful writer. Mm-hmm. But because I'm writing within the confines of these sci-fi universes and these fantasy universes, I need to shove my shit in this show, no matter how much it is putting a square peg in a round hole, essentially.
Yeah, I first encountered that myself, unfortunately, in the realm of video games, and then that ossified and we moved on to other parts of pop culture, comic books. But yeah, people who couldn't get a job writing at whatever magazine or website they wanted to, so they were relegated to writing for Kotaku or The Verge. And the consequence, kind of has been, since they've formed the Overton window of what you could talk about, or like what needed to be talked about more so. Yeah, the politics or whatever, like the things they actually found interesting. That's the stuff that they liked talking about. So that's why you started seeing video games like Depression Quest. Sorry for invoking Zoe Quinn, but things don't, like, culture doesn't start looking this way until the people who determine what is good, or at least like worthwhile, are people who hold the art and the content itself and the audience themselves in contempt. And it's a strange thing that got embraced a little too heavily. Like we alluded to, like Elizabeth Banks, for example, how she backpedaled a little bit and regretted how much she leaned into that. And yeah, there's very little is gained by approaching a piece of pop culture that people are invested in as something that is gross, broken, or like infected. It needs to be chopped up and fixed. That's, I understand reinvention, but it shouldn't be done with malicious intent. Especially if they're just looking to piss people off who they know will be upset about whatever the fuck they're doing. Because, yeah, there was some Tolkien, article I came across as a child where this, academic was trying to invoke the idea that, Tolkien was misogynist because Shelob's lair, the way he described the goings-on of her cave was like penetrating a vagina. And that kind of mentality is just kind of taken over. And there needs to be a reversal. Because there's consequences.
Mm-hmm. And the thing about, there's kind of a second part to this too, and it's just kind of you can tell that these people don't care about what they're writing for, because a lot of them are like Netflix day players. Because I did a little bit of research before we started, and I was looking at the 10 or so credited writers on the Witcher TV show, and you go and you look at their IMDb pages, and it's all just it's all just Netflix shows, and it's all just 1 or 2 episodes per show. So it's there's this woman, Claire Higgins. She's written for Bridgerton, The Devil in Ohio, Umbrella Academy. There's another woman named Jenny Klein, Jessica Jones. There's another guy named Declan Dabara who's written for Iron Fist and Daredevil and Defenders, and it's all just these day players who are work for hire, don't give a shit. I'll come in and write 1 episode of your shitty TV show and then I'm done, type of thing.
Yeah, no commitment, no investment, on a personal level, as far as that goes, let alone a professional one with the property. I mean, they have a professional relationship with Netflix, and that pays their bills. But if you actually want to be a part of something that's enduring and has an audience that cares about you, care about what they care about. That's probably the best lesson to take. As much as Zack Snyder fancied himself to be the guy that had it all figured out as far as what to do with the DC universe, maybe he doesn't fucking know, because whatever he seems to like about the property didn't seem to resonate. It didn't, apart from his fans, very generally, they were hard to get to, to love and care about Snyderverse movies. So we finally have some news. This is in keeping with this, but we now know exactly who the Kevin Feige of the DC universe is going to be, and it's going to be 2 men. Did you predict that it was going to be one of these 2?
Oh, did you want to cover that Henry Cavill thing first before we get on this?
Oh, just the fact that he left? You mean?
Yeah, I thought we were going to touch on that. Yeah.
I guess we kind of glossed over it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of want to touch on that quick. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but yeah, essentially the story is Henry Cavill's leaving after season 3 of The Witcher, and he's going to be replaced with Liam Hemsworth.
Of all fucking people.
Yeah, it's such a weird casting choice, but I mean, clearly Netflix thinks that there's still some water to squeeze out of this stone, so they're going to keep it going, even though they should probably just end it. But the one thing that I really wanted, Henry Cavill is he has this reputation for being like a macho geek like on the internet for some reason, where he posts pictures of himself building his PCs, and he talks about like how like when he got the call for Superman, he was too busy playing like World of Warcraft and almost like missed his chance. And I don't know, I think some of it's kind of like bullshit. And there's interviews you can go dig up about him talking about like, oh yes, I'm so excited, Geralt of Rivia is a dream role and blah blah blah. But I found this very, very timely quote that has aged like fine wine that I want to read here.
Okay.
This was from a 2016 interview with a magazine called Man of the World. I have no idea what that is, but
that's an airport magazine if I've ever heard of one.
Yeah. So this is what Cavill said. He said, "I'm slightly wary of saying this because it can be frowned upon, certainly by members of my community and people outside my community, but I'm not just doing this for the art. I'm making money, I'm spending it on nice stuff, whether that be lavish holidays for me and my friends, or just seeing something and going into a shop and saying, yeah, I want that for the house, and I'm buying it now." So
what?
He basically just like fessed up that he's doing it all for the money. And I mean, clearly what this situation here is, that DC news was announced and he's suddenly the it guy again. And so he's like, fuck this TV show. I'm going to go be Superman, and I'm going to go, do all these, his star power has suddenly been like supercharged again, basically.
He got the rub from Dwayne Johnson. And he's been tapped, and the things are moving. Walter Hamada's out of the way. And the way has been paved, like I jumped the gun on. But yeah, it's Zaslav, and he's making the move. We have James Gunn and Peter Safran.
Yep.
And I didn't realize this, but Safran's kind of been involved in the DC milieu for a while. Like, he was involved in Shazam, and obviously with Peacemaker, and I think Suicide Squad even, like the James Gunn version. So, like, what do each of them bring to the table? Like, what is the hope from Zaslav in this hiring choice and in this structure? Just not putting all the eggs in one basket, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that they're going for, one of them is the creative guy, the other is the logistics guy, and that's kind of what it's going to be. And I think that's a really, it's like one of the only inspired things that they've done recently, like DC and Warner Brothers. But this is a really good idea. I mean, this is like probably one of the best case scenarios for what could happen right now, because James Gunn, I just want to see what his version of the DC universe looks like, what his sort of vision is. And I think my only hope is that he knows when to use his style, and then he knows when to kind of let other people use their styles with other projects, because I don't think you can really adapt his style to every DC property. Like, I don't want to see James Gunn's Superman, for instance.
Yeah, but what he does bring to the table is what we were alluding to in our last segment. It's like, what you should bring is some genuine, healthy enthusiasm for the project. Like for the larger world that you're going to be working in, and he clearly has that. He at least has a healthy respect, enough to put in the effort to make Polka Dot Man a resonated character for people. And no one else is going to make those kinds of moves for DC, but they need somebody like that, because so much of what makes their stable great is all the fucking weirdos and losers that they have in their lineup of heroes and villains. But yeah, ultimately, I think we had kind of guessed that maybe he was going to be the guy. I think in a prior conversation we had, I forget which episode it even was. Was it at the end of Black Adam that we talked about this?
Yeah, I think maybe it was mentioned. I know that I was going to ask you about this, but one of the things that was reported last week before this news came out was that James Gunn was meeting with Warner Brothers to discuss like secret projects.
That's right. Yeah.
My sort of question to you was going to be, do you think that was just a cover for this, or do you think he actually has like secret projects, like specific properties that he wants to do other than, because it was reported this was other than Peacemaker and other than Suicide Squad?
I could see that. I could almost even see those conversations about his larger plans and secret projects to be why they just said, fuck it, give him the whole shebang. He obviously has an idea, but if you look at like the actual articles and like what is said, there is a distinction made, and I think I put it in a slide on here. But effectively, everybody still gets all their own fiefdoms, like kind of what we thought it was going to be. The Joker universe is siloed. Matt Reeves' Batman universe is siloed, so much so that now they have the Penguin show going full speed ahead, and it's going to be its own thing. And these guys don't have to worry about that shit. Like the auteurs, the true auteurs still have their space, within the DC franchises. But as far as the main line, like main Earth of of this is concerned, it's good to know that they finally have some kind of coherent and unifying, like leadership position. But I do hope that they let people still be them and bring their own ideas to the table within the universe that clearly exists. And apparently it's the Snyderverse, which is it lives on, in spite of everything. And just not news I expected we would get that soon. It kind of blindsided me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, nice surprise.
But that kind of does it for the news segment. I forgot to pull in the bumper, but we're just gonna answer the watch list. And in my time working for the Minot Daily News, I cover a lot of fluff, I'll be honest with you. It's, they've opened up this new wing of the hospital, go take a picture of the ribbon cutting. But on occasion, you do run into something that's very real and very pervasive, and for me, it was trailer parks in my local community getting bought up by unscrupulous, equity firms, from like New Jersey and Florida. And they're, just slumlords. They raise the lot rent on people. And suddenly these people can't afford to live in the homes that they own themselves because they've been specifically targeted in this way. And I was writing about it, and my, publisher was getting exhausted by the topic. And then I got an email from some publicists in New York about this movie that I'm running the trailer for, A Decent Home, and it summarizes the issue, very well, and it showcases 4 specific communities. One's like right next door to the Google's headquarters, and mostly their employees live there because it's all that they can afford. In Silicon Valley is a mobile home that costs an arm and a leg to live in. But in other parts of the country, like in Aurora, Colorado, the people who owned the park were getting ready to sell it, rezone it, and convert it into like a fancy medical campus. And there's no way that anyone, even in local government, is going to listen because they want a $5 billion medical campus to be built there. And who gives a shit about 300 families that live in this mobile home? So it's a bit of a polemic. I'm being a little bit of an activist by recommending this movie. But it's something that's very real. It's affecting the whole country, and it's kind of fucked up because it's predatory. There's the lady who made it. She's kind of like Laura Poitras light. I'll describe her that way. The manner is very much the same. It's just dry photography and talking heads. But she went on this like seminar class for people who are learning about investing in trailer parks. That's being taught by a mobile home association. So it's the people who sell mobile home parks in Iowa. And he lays it out in plain English that basically you buy this, you jack up the rent. There's nothing that these people can do. They can't afford to move their trailer, so they can either sell to you or walk. And either way, you hold all the cards. It's just very chilling and matter of fact. And then it's happening in real time. Where I live right now, I've had people you'll get eviction notices even though they've paid their rent up fully, but because they can't keep their books well enough in New Jersey, people are getting eviction process put against them, and then they got to go out of their way and fucking deal with that and show the receipts and whatnot. But it's the tip of the iceberg. But you do get to see these people's lives, and it's just a nice little slice of life. But eventually, none of these people are going to be able to live in the homes that they've worked so hard to get, and that's the American dream, and that's fucked up. You can find a decent home on video on demand pretty much everywhere. Like, if you like Vudu, you can buy it on there. If you like watching on Apple, you can find it there too.
And this is out now, because didn't you see like a early screener of it or something?
Yeah, they gave me a Vimeo link, and
that's right.
Yeah, that's how I was able to see it so early. Yeah, it came out like last Tuesday, technically.
Okay.
And yeah, but the director's name is Sarah Terry. She hasn't done a heck of a lot, but I've got to email with her, on and off while I was working on this. So good luck to her and her continued coverage of this issue. Mm-hmm. And next up, of course, we have Barbarian. Which was directed by one of the whitest kids we know, right?
Yeah, Zach Krieger.
Mm-hmm. And what was your takeaway on this after finally getting to see it? Did it live up to the hype?
I would say so. Yeah, this is such a weird movie to talk about, because I really can't get into it without ruining the movie. And this is one of the biggest cases I have ever seen of actually getting spoiled on this movie. Probably will ruin it for you, because it relies so heavily on numerous reveals throughout the movie. And so I guess the kind of pitch is that a woman books an Airbnb, but then when she gets there, another man is already staying there, and the Airbnb was double booked. And they basically make a deal to share the Airbnb, and things kind of go from there. And it's wherever you think it's going, it's not. It's definitely not. And so I had a lot of fun with this movie. I liked it best when it was grounded in reality, and there are parts in this movie where it is genuinely super creepy and messed up. But the final 10 minutes of it, I was just sitting there, I don't know, I felt like I was in slow motion, and I was going, no, just why are you doing this? Because it really kind of shits the bed in the last 10 minutes, where things get super wild and super fantastical, and you can really tell that this was written by somebody who used to write sketch comedy, because it almost gets funny in the final 10 minutes, to a annoying degree, and just a lot of unrealistic things happen. But I would say overall, though, this is a very worthwhile movie, because there are so many really unexpected twists, and you have no idea where it's going, and there's a genuine creep factor. And did you by chance watch this? Or
yes, I did. This yet? I did.
You did, okay.
And I feel like you threaded the fucking needle by not spoiling a goddamn thing about this movie, because it is difficult to discuss it in any way without doing that. You have to, the trailer gives you all that it can give you as far as the premise is concerned, because once you get that first peek at what's really going on, and then the further explanation about it, it's your jaw just hits the floor, and you're just what the why, but at that point it's gone full gonzo, and you're either along for the ride or you're just waiting for the movie to end. And yeah, it does kind of wear out its welcome, but I did enjoy this kind of it's a Russian nesting doll experience. You have the exterior, and then you have oh wait, no, there's the real thing. Oh, where's the real movie at? And then you realize, that is the movie. It is just that process of getting the rug pulled out from underneath you 5 times, and by the fifth time, it's no longer surprising, and your ass just hurts.
Yeah. Yeah, it just gets a little too ridiculous in the end. And I'll tell you that the point at which the movie took a turn for me was, without spoiling it for anybody who hasn't seen it, was when a homeless person like brings people into his house. That's where I was just like, and then what follows after that, I was just like, oh no, this is horrible. Like this is really, really terrible how this is ending. And yeah, I don't know. It felt like a tonal whiplash, and it just became really like fantastical and ridiculous. And but the one thing I will tell you that I loved, like one of the coolest reveals ever in a movie, in my opinion, is again, without trying not to spoil it, was when she first arrives at the Airbnb and it's completely pitch black outside, and then the next morning when she goes outside and you realize like essentially where she is.
Yeah,
I thought that was an amazing reveal, because I did notice that when she first arrived and she looked around and there was like no street lights or anything, and everything was just pitch black, and that was great. I really, really liked that. And yeah, I mean, overall a really worthwhile movie in my opinion. And but it kind of leads to a larger question, and I was thinking about this while watching the movie. I wasn't spoiled on this movie, but the one thing you always hear about when people talk about this, people who have seen it, when they talk to people who haven't, they say, don't look about it, don't spoil yourself. And my question is, if you're spoiled on a movie, I guess, should a movie be able to overcome spoilers to actually be a good movie? Like,
yeah.
should there be more to a movie than just spoilers in order to, shouldn't the movie be able to overcome that? Like, isn't that just kind of a excuse almost?
I think you're kind of right, because we all know because that's especially once a movie is out and it has permeated the consciousness, of culture, and this the ethereal memory we all have. Like, take Alien for example. We all know that it's going to come bursting out of his chest, but what makes that movie great is the mechanics. It's the setup and the payoff, and it's the process. The reveal, is just the cherry on top. But it's like in a good movie, especially a horror movie, like even if it's Halloween, it's like we all know what's gonna happen. Michael Myers is gonna fuck some shit up, but it's the how, that stuff matters. How it's performed, how it's executed, that is the strength of a good movie, and you come back to it regardless of if you know what's coming or not. You go back to it because you know what's coming. You're caught up in the ride, of the experience. It's just like going on a roller coaster and knowing where the turns are gonna come,
Yeah.
and. Yeah, it is just kind of an excuse, and because a lot of people are really, really high on this movie, and I disagree with them on that. I feel ultimately, it's a cheap experience. But that said, I did fucking love the what the monster of this movie is. I fucking loved that. I thought they achieved it in a very awesome way, but there just wasn't enough of the build up to like what it was proven to be, and then the fall off in quality once the reveal happens. Once the mystery is over and you're just left with the utter awareness, the magic is lost, and you're just left in disbelief, going, "Wait a minute, why don't the cops just fucking listen?" You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that's where that's where they lost me. I was just like, oh no. If a young black woman in Detroit was coming up to me saying the shit that she was saying and I was a policeman, I'd think I'd be fucking listening. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong about that. But that was just my impression.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that kind of leads me to, say, as much as I enjoyed this movie, I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again, because it has nothing left to give. This is a very, this is a single one-time use only movie,
Yeah.
and I really don't have anything left to get out of it, and so that's kind of the best way that I think you can approach it, because it is enjoyable.
It's enjoyable, but like people tend on the internet, especially, tend to be like everything has like every year has to have the modern horror classic, and then they get to fight about which movie gets to wear the crown in a given year, and anyone given their crown to Barbarian, I feel, is throwing it away, because there's been a lot of quality elsewhere in the realm of horror, and we're going to be talking about it in a little bit here. But yeah, if you got HBO Max, give it a watch. It was better than The Watcher and all like the Shudder originals that I've been watching lately. I've been trying really hard, but there's some tropes that I'll get into another time. I need to spend more time watching Shudder to formalize the theory that I have. But I have been watching The Peripheral. Did you get a chance to watch this?
I did not, no.
Okay. So, yeah, this is a Amazon series by way of... I don't think it actually is Jonathan Nolan, even though I did read some articles where they said he was involved, but I don't believe he is. He's not. I think it might be Lisa Joy. Okay. That makes more sense. Because it still feels whip smart, just a step ahead in future, tech, which is, because it's a William Gibson adaptation. I was also wrong earlier when I said that it was part of the pattern recognition, universe of his books. That's wrong. That's totally separate. But in this, people have really intense VR headsets, and this girl and her brother, who's a vet, live in like Appalachia, and she wears his avatar and levels. She like boosts people in VR gaming for money in this future, because that's the only job she can really have outside of running a 3D print shop. So it's like Winter's Bone meets like future tech. Their mom is dying of some tumor that they can't afford the money for. And she gets a gig on behalf of her brother to wear an experimental headset that sends her to a future alternate reality. And then she's like basically involved in this war being fought. So it's kind of like the Christopher Nolan movie Tenet, where things are where you have people in the future, coordinating with the past to try and fuck with our heroes, because once they realize what they're caught up in, you kind of fucks with their heads. But at the same time, they're being used by the people who are working against the governments of the future, and there's a lot going on in this show. But for the most part, Chloe Grace Moretz does a decent job as the lead. The shitty boyfriend from Midsummer plays her brother, and he does a pretty good job. And yeah, I'm gonna finish watching it. It has a neat premise, and there's 2 books of material for them to draw, from, as far as this part of William Gibson's bibliography is concerned. And yeah, it's decent for an Amazon show. It's a rung below the best of like what Westworld could be, but it's decent. It's as good as probably like the second or third season of The Expanse, as soon as Amazon started taking over.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you, so you had mentioned that there's 2 books worth of material. So do you feel as if, there's enough there to stay interesting throughout the entire season?
That's a tougher question. If they do a book a season, that's the unfortunate thing. I think they should treat this more like Homecoming, that another Amazon series of theirs, that they called it quits after 2, because but they that was based on a podcast, and they didn't overbleed that one either. And in this case, like the pilot episode is like 75 minutes long. It's basically a feature film, and they pack a lot into every episode, and you get your money's worth, pound for pound when it's all said and done. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're adding to it. I can't say. I've never actually read these books, but I was aware of them, and now I'm compelled to actually pick them up and read them. But as far as like a cyberpunk TV show goes, like this is what we got. I'll take it.
Okay. Yeah.
Now the time has come for the main event. This is going to be a fucking barn burner, folks. So if you need to go take a piss, go do it now, because the time has come to talk about 8 hours of Lovecraftian Del Toro greatness. The Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix. When this was first announced, what was your confidence level that it was actually going to be good?
I was pretty, I wanted it to be good, or I had a lot of confidence going in because, looking at the directors, the number of directors, and just who is on this show, it really inspired. I was looking forward to this a lot.
Yeah, and as was I. But what I found, shocking was how straight some of these adaptations were. Of the specific stories.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they ran the gamut. They actually pulled a lot of more recent writing from like the looks of it. That when you looked at like who wrote some of the stories that inspired some of the episodes, like The Outside, that was she's like a webcomic artist, and Del Toro curated her. He was like, "Yo, you're a good one," and Anna Lily Almapur, you're gonna direct it, make it happen. Very inspired. Like all the different crews and the casts, like you don't see these kinds of actors in anything but movies, but now they're all in these really tight, lean, mean, hours of television. And golly, if there was, I don't know, we can maybe get into the rankings of all of them in a little bit, but like if there was a general theme uniting all of them, what did you think it was?
I guess, gosh, I mean, obviously they're all horror directors. These are all to some extent, horror short films. And I know that, I don't know if there was like a theme through all of them. Maybe you have a better answer, but I don't know why this wasn't really publicized more, but each duo of episodes that was released over the 4 days has a theme. Did you ever look into that at all?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it's like, I'm trying to remember what they were. I know that the third night, the theme was Cthulhu or H.P. Lovecraft or something.
Yeah.
And then I know one of the nights, the theme was like loners or something. So
okay.
they did purposefully group the films together in these duos over the 4 nights. But other than that, I don't know. What do you think about that? What as far as an overall theme?
God, now that I think about it, like it's specific ones have a lot in common. Like there's lots of things being birthed out of people, or people being used as a medium to transform something else into something else. There's a lot of things coming out of people's mouths too, especially rat-shaped stuff. And so that kind of imagery was reoccurring from story to story. But now that I realize that they were specifically isolating them and like labeling them, I'm wondering which ones were the loners. But like I'm assuming that maybe the Witch House and Pickman's model, maybe that one is about loners.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I think those might have been, because those were released on the same night, right?
Yeah.
I think those were the Cthulhu ones, I want to say.
Okay, yeah, because Yog-Sothoth is the gate. He is the key. Yeah, because that was in and that was what was shocking to me. Was just how like deliberate and specific they were about the Lovecraft stuff without it coming off as stupid. Like really getting like what can be fucked up about about that level of cosmic horror. Like as soon as his wife and kid looked at that fucking painting, I was like, oh, it's over. It's over now. I can't say I've ever read that story on its own, because a great deal of what informs my Lovecraft experience is Providence by Alan Moore, and that's really how I even knew what was going on in some of these ahead of time, is because of what he did with that book. But seeing Brown Jenkin legitimately just be as he is, the little rodent familiar thing that the witch has. That was DJ Qualls. That was really, really ridiculous. But yeah, I don't know. I was just very pleased that they just did it. I don't know. Some of them weren't as effective. I think Pickman's model wasn't as good as it could have been. They all have great moments, but some of them just kind of feel a little rote. Like we're just going through the motions of Lovecraftian spookiness. But then there's others that just really fucking grab you by the fucking balls, and you give you a really tight squeeze and a twist.
I think maybe we should kind of backpedal a bit here. We're kind of meandering through,
I suppose,
the episodes. So I don't know. You want to go back to sort of the beginning, and just kind of talk about them, take them one by one.
We could just jump into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we can talk about which ones were our favorites. So right off the bat was Lot 36, which is Tim Blake Nelson, directed by Guillermo Navarro, Del Toro's usual cinematographer. And this is based on one of Del Toro's stories, like a short story of his.
Yeah.
And this is he's a guy that Tim Blake Nelson's character is a guy that he listens to talk radio like Rush Limbaugh, rants about immigrants, and he buys abandoned storage lockers to try and find anything of value. That was another theme that came up that I guess I noticed. People who are in debt, people who owe something to somebody and are struggling with paying it back. And I think that is just because it's an easy, relatable thing, especially when Lovecraft was writing. So when you're writing these kinds of stories, generally your protagonist is kind of a shitty person, like Tim Blake Nelson's is. But ultimately, when this when the rubber hits the road and you have the walking tentacle demon coming at you, is that the power of this episode, or I don't know? Does this serve as mostly just an entry point to everything that comes after it, or does it stand up on its own?
I think, it was okay. I think this was probably the wrong episode for them to start with, because I think it's one of the weaker ones in my opinion. I don't know. I guess I'm, from kind of the way that you were talking, I think I'm probably less high on this series as a whole than you are.
Okay.
I actually thought some of the episodes were outright bad in my opinion.
I would agree with that on a couple of them. Yeah.
But I don't know. This one, I thought it was a little too obvious. He was cartoonishly racist, and then it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of slow. It was like a 50-minute short where it's all just build up until about the last 5 or so minutes, and the ending kind of fell flat to me too. It was just kind of he basically gets pulled. He runs up to that door and asks the lady to help him out. She doesn't, and then he just kind of gets pulled away, and then that's the end. So
yeah, it's a moral fable. It's and that's ultimately why it didn't really resonate with me, apart from the imagery. I liked the way that the demon was done, but it takes so fucking long to get there. And is that worth it? Probably not. This could have been a 20-minute episode of an anthology series. And maybe if there's any knock on any of these, it's that they probably just should have been shorter. They did not need to be these big long productions, because there's the butter gets scraped over a lot of bread, by the time they're done with it. And with this episode in particular.
That's actually, if there is anything that unites a lot of these, I think a lot of them are too long. And I don't know if that was just like a Netflix thing where Netflix was like, these must be at least, whatever, at least 50 minutes or at least 45 minutes. Because there's only one of them that I believe is under 45 minutes. And that's, I think the second one. I think the second episode's like 38. And yeah, I just feel like a lot of them are way too long. And, getting back to this one, as you said, a lot of just kind of meandering around, like investigation almost type stuff. And I don't know. It just kind of, it didn't really meld for me. And especially because it was written by Del Toro, I had a lot of high expectations for this one. And I mean, Del Toro's not the most, he does generally write very obvious. Like he's very, very obvious about his like themes and the message he's trying to get across. But it's not usually as, and maybe that's because of who directed it. I don't know.
Yeah, because ultimately, it just has its very obvious message that it's trying to impart, and it uses some spooky shit to get it there, but like it could have gone in so many other places that could have been interesting beyond just we've broken the salt line that binds this demon to the floor and now everyone must die. Like there could have been more going on, like. That lady could have called them in, but maybe she had other plans. Maybe there's other people that would love to have these books and have that demon in their control. I don't know. That there could have been more of a real story, but yeah, like these should have been 20 minutes shorter. They could have just done the same thing in less time, but they also need to fit in. We didn't talk about this, but if there is a weak part to every episode, it's whenever Del Toro is introducing what's going on, because his delivery is just so flat and he just mumbles and he just like waddles around and then pulls something out and then sit down and then walks away. And like I did like how he introduced each filmmaker every time, but I didn't look forward to him showing up at the beginning of every episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably also has partly to do with his Spanish accent. I did have to turn on subtitles a couple times, but it was sort of weird. He was trying to do like the Rod Serling thing, and mostly it was just kind of just there. And I did like how he had the little like figurines of each director, and he put down the figurine on the table, and that was kind of cool. But probably unnecessary. And again, like you said, it added to the runtime of each one. And I guess to speak a little bit on stuff that I actually liked about this particular episode, I did like the design of the demon when it was still like in the girl's body when she was on the ground, and like her face was gone, but you could see the tentacles like writhing where her like in her like head cavity. And that was kind of cool. And then I also like the detail of the automatic lights in the storage place where you turn the crank and then it slowly ticks down until the lights turn off, because it's like a 24-hour storage place.
A good little mechanic for spookiness built into the situation. But like there's just things that I found a lot more interesting than this, really unlikable dude just wheeling shit in and out of a storage locker for an hour. Like there could have been other things going on, obviously. But as far as this one goes, it's on the lower rung for me. And it probably could have done a totally different episode, especially if it was going to have Del Toro involved as much as he was. The second one, Graveyard Rats, directed by Vincenzo Natali, I enjoyed it because it was just a little leaner and meaner,
Yeah.
than most of the other ones. Like you pointed out, it's shorter, and I felt that ultimately its shocker ending was earned. They gave me a lot, but it felt like a proper short story versus
Mm-hmm.
an overblown one. And
Yeah, this was probably one of my favorite, or on the high end for me. Like you said, it actually felt like a short story or short film, and I don't know, out of all of the sort of premises of any of these, this one for some reason it irks me the most, or it kind of
okay,
gets under my skin the most. Like this idea of being trapped in like a underground network of tunnels in a graveyard where there's no way out. I don't know. That just it really got under my skin as I was kind of thinking about it, and I really like the designs of like the monsters, the multiple monsters that the short had.
yeah, the rodent of unusual size that is nursing an endless horde of rat babies. And yeah, the zombie that just keeps going, mine, mine. Yeah, there was funny things, and a Cthulhu creature, that was worshipped by somebody. Yeah, like
Yeah, that is interesting.
it had subtle
What
world
was
building. Yeah,
what was the idea behind that, do you think? Like as far as um is that like a remnant from like a older civilization that's been, built on top, or is that somebody's like secret lair or something, or what do you think is the idea behind that?
that's I think based on what is set up within it, the episode itself, he references that like there was people would worship strange gods and temples built like in caves underneath the town. So yeah, I think that it was just something that like early immigrants or even pre like Western colonialization, like Native American worshippers of something, or like that might have been where like what are they called, like the fish people, like maybe that's where they
Oh yeah.
operated, or it's a rat god. I'm not sure. Maybe we're looking at it wrong. Maybe it's not Cthulhu. Maybe it's just a giant rat king that is sentient.
Yeah.
But either way, it had some really ghoulish and good gore in it, and yeah, you still felt bad enough for the guy, but then you had to remember, oh yeah, he robs his own graves that he's supposed to be protecting. This guy deserved it. He was just mad that the rats were beating him to the punch.
Yeah, and one of the I'm not really familiar with the actor, the
Yeah,
main actor, but his name's David Hewlett, and I thought he did a very very good performance. Because yeah, like you said, he was kind of a piece of shit, but you still kind of felt bad for him in some ways because he was a little bit of an idiot too. So
yeah, a little bit of an oaf. Like, yeah, of course he lost at cards. He has no guile. He's just a mark, completely and utterly a mark. And the one time he thinks that he's got something figured out at all, just blows up spectacularly in his face because he gets all the gold. He finds all all those goodies and the sword, and it doesn't even matter. Because he fucked up. And now he's just more rat food. So I dug that. Now this next one, Angie really liked, and I really did not think I was too into it. It was just a little too weird, and I didn't understand what it was trying to say. But The Outside, starring Kate Micucci from Hall and Oates fame, directed by Anna Lily Amapour, and yeah, Haley Z. Boston for Brand New Cherry Flavor. I think she was just one of the writers on that.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's just a weird little Midwest housewife who works at a bank and has an awful haircut, and then sees a creepy commercial starring Dan Stevens and starts buying sentient lotion.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell because yeah, sentient lotion that, or almost like I don't I guess I just still don't really understand what it did at the end there where it like enveloped her, but then I don't know if it like went into her body, and then that's how she became like hot and popular or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was very very weird, and this is probably, I mean, because of who directed this is probably the one that I was looking the most forward to, and it was kind of a disappointment to me, kind of like you said. Out of all of them, definitely the one that didn't need to be as long as it was. There was like certain shots that lingered for so, like specific shots in this that lingered for so long, and I'm like, why is this lingering? Like in particular, there's one, well, when she goes back to the bank as her new self, and the shot lingers for like probably like 20 or 30 seconds and nothing's happening. It's just like her smiling almost. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It was very weird. And um, yeah, it's a 20-minute idea stretched out over an hour.
And was that just a little bit just like hubris on their part that they're like, oh yeah, we can do this, like we can just mine this, we can just throw anything against the wall, it'll stick. But yeah, it, like, and I didn't, and that nothing is happening. This one was so boring. It's just her scratching, slathering lotion on herself, watching TV, and talking with her husband about, like arguing with him about whether or not she should keep using the lotion or not. And
Yeah.
it honestly reminds, and I don't know, like there was the aspect of like the TV talking to her and the whole like pseudo retro aesthetic that it has going for it. I've seen that in so many indie horror movies lately and like weird surrealist dramas as well. I can't remember the names of any of them, but they're so like even like Adult Swim. Like this felt like the Adult Swim kids were given way too much money, and this is the end result because it even has Mikuchi being in this just feels like weird alt indie project that got out of control, and then Del Toro signed off on it.
Yeah, yeah, it does. In some respects, it definitely does. I'm not really sure if the director and the writer for this one really line up. Like, it almost seems like two conflicting like styles, like mashing up against each other. And there was a couple things though that I did like about it. Like, I did like how it was shot, where everybody shot from below, really in really close up, so it just makes them look disgusting, like those scenes where the like rich housewives are like rubbing the lotion on their skin, and it's making like sound effects that sound like you're stirring mac and cheese or something like that. It's so
Squelching.
gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And so
yeah.
there was kind of a Ren and Stimpy vibe almost in those
Okay.
scenes.
Yeah. I see what you mean, but and that's kind of like like what I was referring to from like other projects. Like there's one with Will Wheaton where it's like Rent a Buddy, and this guy rents a mysterious tape where Will Wheaton talks to him, and the conversation just gets way too real. Kind of like when Dan Stevens is on the TV. What the fuck was that accent that Dan Stevens was going for? It was like, like it was like,
Yeah, it was.
are you posh or French? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was strange. I think he was kind of trying to channel. It was like a mix of like a televangelist and like Jim Baker or something like that.
Yeah, there you go. God, I'm just reminded about that. That I can't believe she won Best Actress for that Tammy Faye Baker movie.
Oh yeah.
Sorry for the digression, but that's The Outside. Kind of the most disappointing of the bunch. We had expectations. This next one, I really had fucking expectations for, and that is The Autopsy, because I saw that my boy David Pryor was directing it, and it's based on a short story by a really fucking well-regarded weird fiction writer, and like he doesn't do Cthulhu in specific. Like he's not a fanboy. He does his own, gonzo shit. Michael Shea. He's really interesting. I read up on him quite a bit. But we got F. Murray Abraham starring, and he's just a what's the coroner who's been called in to figure out why these coal miners died in a mining collapse. What more could there possibly be to this story, Matt? It's pretty cut and dry, I'd say. The mind collapse killed him.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite one, if I'm to be honest. I mean, I was in from just hearing that this was directed by David Pryor. I am such a fan of the guy after I mean, I've only seen The Empty Man of his movies, but that's all I really needed to have seen because I love that movie so much. And this is kind of channeling the same
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic. And it's sort of that like cosmic horror. Like the very first shot of this short is of the sky, of the night sky and a bunch of stars, and then it slowly dissolves into like the wall of the cave system.
Mm-hmm.
It almost reminded me of one of those like shots in Blonde where Dominic does like the exact same thing, like the sperm that's floating around turning into the night sky in that movie. But anyways, I was so down. It totally reminded me of some of those scenes in The Empty Man when the guy goes out to the summer camp and the sky starts like swirling and stuff. And yeah, I really really like this one. It's a little strangely structured,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, like where it has that scene. It has the mining collapse scene, and you don't know what the fuck is going on, and then it kind of launches into like a almost like a procedural
Yeah.
type show, and then the whole like final 25 minutes or so is the actual like story, is like
Yeah.
the actual thing that is the bulk of the narrative. And so a little weirdly structured in that way, but still I thought it kind of overcome that.
Yeah, it was a little wonky. Because it takes a little bit to get to why the autopsy is happening, but it had this feel of like we were just dropped into the middle of a TV show, and this is just of like its own separate thing. Like this could be its own show. F. Murray Abraham and God, what's the other actor's name? I can't remember who plays the sheriff, but it's just all the wacky shit that they've had to deal with. Like in all of
Yeah.
it's like all these people dying around my town, and you gotta cut them open. Obviously, this is like the finale to their story. Given what happens in the episode. But yeah, there was like once it became apparent what was really fucking going on and how they portrayed the entity, the alien thing, it was just so fucked up and disturbing and just right on in as far as like the edginess of it. But yeah, as soon as like the true cosmic like mentality of that creature was put on display, I was just in my glories. I couldn't believe that it was actually going in that direction. Because yeah, like we are just insignificant fucking things to these creatures. At least we should be in good cosmic horror. And the way that this particular thing, it was like the Yerks and Animorphs. If you ever read those as a kid,
Yeah.
it's essentially the same thing if you think about it. This is just a more like, but if a Yerk was like stretching itself out over your entire body and manually making your muscles move with its tentacles, it's just like ugh, fucked up. But it's the worst tapeworm in the universe, and yeah, and very fucking brutal and gross. Like that,
Yeah.
like all the autopsy, like when the autopsies were first happening, and I was just seeing like all the entrails getting dumped out, and I was just like, okay, I couldn't have this job in real life. I couldn't handle this.
Yeah, it was probably the hardest one to watch because especially towards the end when F. Murray Abraham is like gouging out his own eyes and ears
Yeah,
with like a pencil. Oh God, that was so rough. But yeah, it's totally. I mean, one of the better ones in my opinion, and it totally gets what it's going for, and I'm so excited to see what this guy does from here, what David Pryor does from here,
yeah,
because like I said, he's a guy who only has, I think, one movie under his belt, and
yeah.
so it's like I really want to see what his next thing is.
For a guy that got his leg up in the industry by just doing the behind the scenes documentaries for David Fincher movies, I mean, yeah, like I have seen his work whether I know it or not, because who actually watches the credits for those things. You know, like I never did. But yeah, whatever this guy does next has my full attention. And of all the filmmakers involved in this, he's probably the one that was best served by saying yes to it. Some of these other people, yeah, they made something, and I revel in the fact that they got to do it. But when you get down to it, is all of it worth it? Maybe not. But this one absolutely was. Like I wouldn't trade this for another story or like another entry in like another Lovecraft specific episode, or greenlighting something weird from like Miranda July, or someone out of left field like that. This is one I would definitely keep, and it's one of the two that I recommend wholeheartedly. But I'm really when we get to it, I'm really curious what your thoughts are going to be, because a little divisive, this one. But the next entry is one that I feel was really rough. As much as I loved what Crispin Glover was getting to do, but Pickman's model. This is a really strange Lovecraft story for them to pick, and I don't understand why they did. But because the gist is you have this guy who's a painter and artist, and he's just a layabout. He's not taking his studies seriously, the main character. And he has a new guy in his class who's this really old, weird fuck who only paints things that are really, like, gross or, like, gruesome. The flesh on people are decaying. And there's just something wrong with this Pickman guy because he just doesn't see the world the same way as everybody else. And that's a deep Lovecraftian theme. Like, it resonated with me. Like, I was happy that it was getting some, insertion into this project, but it's just the most dull, boring fucking episode. And the payoff is, like, awesome, I'll give you that, but it was agony getting there.
Okay. Interesting. That's very interesting. See, I was kind of flipped on this episode than you, because I was down for the feel of this one, sort of like it's almost gothic horror in some respects, where it's slow. It doesn't, a lot of times until the end, it doesn't resort to violence. It's mostly just imagery, and I don't know, I was down for what it was doing, but then I thought that like the final sort of 15 or so minutes is when it shit the bed, because
it got really dumb.
I thought the monster was so lame. The monster that crawled up out of that what was that, like a
the well thing?
A well thing. That was so lame, and it was just like a really like generic CGI creature number 512 or something. Yeah. And then I don't know, the ending was like came out of nowhere for me, because suddenly the short gets like incredibly violent with like the woman, his wife, with their eyes gouged out, and then like the kid in the oven, and I'm like, holy fuck, what is it doing? Just like it just came out of nowhere for me, and then it just ended on like the kid in the oven, and I was like, what a weird way to end something like this.
Yeah, because that's my problem with it, because I don't recall there being like Pickman's model on its own didn't have Lovecraftian like Cthulhu Yog-Sothothery happening in it. It was just this guy whose paintings were really like realistic and disturbing, and everyone were like just taken by it but turned off at the same time. And then the main character just finds out, the big reveal is they're real, and that's why he's painting from like reality, not from his imagination, and that's like the big and like shocking thing at the final line of the short story. So they add in this, but so they weave in this whole idea that not only are those things real, but like he's also seeing the world for how it really is. The whole Lovecraftian idea that all of these monsters, like Cthulhu or Yog-Sothoth, are actually present at all times. Like they have always been there. they are omniscient and omnipresent. They exist, beyond time, extra dimensionally. And it's just because we perceive reality the way we do that we don't know that they're there. And it just didn't get quite enough definition within the story itself before all of a sudden, we're tripping on a boy's head in an oven. And what pissed me off about that is because he's just like, oh no, you've looked at the thing. Now get out of my sight and quickly, go home before things get really fucked up. And then he just goes right home and is just hoping that everything is going to be okay. Like, that was what felt lame to me, was that he just, like, stumbles upon everything in his life getting fucked up. But, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with either of the H.P. Lovecraft stories that they adapt in this series, but from what I understand, from what I've read about, this show does not utilize those stories very well.
No.
In that, it kind of takes them and turns them into something else. And so when we get to the other one, I've heard some pretty like bad things about how that adaptation was done.
In specific towards dreams in the witch house.
Yeah.
Yes. Big fat thumbs down. Yeah, because I don't remember the particulars of the original, but yeah, this one was made for teen girls, basically. Because it's got Rupert Grint, it's Catherine Hardwicke, and I know for a fact that the story wasn't about trying to get your sister out of limbo, because that's what they constructed this to be. But yeah, I do know it's just about a guy going to a house that used to belong to a witch and having really fucking crazy dreams. That's what Dreams in the Witch House is about. And Brown Jenkins shows up, or Jenkin Brown, whatever, and it's, Keziah Mason. It's cool seeing those particular characters realized, but yeah, it's, what is it all the service of? It's yeah. Like, what was your big issue with it?
I mean, you kind of said it. It's like H.P. Lovecraft for the Disney audience, and it was like, I just thought badly directed. This was the only one of these episodes where I actually like laughed because something was so bad, and it actually happened twice during this episode. Once when the witch is like running around the forest, and they didn't give her any sort of like effects when she was running. Like, they didn't make her float. They didn't make her look like, otherworldly at all. She's just running like a normal person, and it looks ridiculous. And then the other thing that I thought was so hilarious was when Rupert Grint was like flopping all over the church pews when she was like pulling him towards the entrance to the church, and he was just flopping around. Oh man, that was so awful. And it was almost as if, like, I don't know if they ran out of budget and they just told him, like, all right, Rupert, now what we need you to do is just flop all over everywhere and we'll fix it in post. But then they like never did fix it in post. But I don't know, it was just bad, and there was nothing really to it. It was a very simple story that really held no surprises or anything, and yeah, not good.
Not good. Just, it did every obvious thing, even the ending. I expected that shit, because but at the same time, I loved it. I laughed out loud because Brown Jenkins gets the last laugh, and yeah, it was just awesome to see that realized. But the rest of that crap just got really old really quick. I didn't give a shit about his friend. But yeah, because there was just lots of, I don't know, really pointed casting. It's Netflix. I realize they're going to do that, especially if it's H.P. Lovecraft. You're going to want to try and make it more palatable and not cater to that man's worst tendencies. I understand that. But when, like, in the finale, when there's, two black women in the church at the end, I was just like, okay, guys, there's a whole rainbow of humanity you could have cast in any of these roles. But yeah, it's really too bad, because I was excited about this one, even though it was Catherine Hardwicke. you know, like I wanted this to be decent, but it's just like I liked the smoldering, like I liked how they did Keziah, but the other parts, yeah, just cheap, not well executed, and repetitive. How many times do we
Yeah.
got to see him go, oh, I'm in an opium den, and now I'm in a witch's house. I'm in the woods, I'm making ripples, man. Like, move on. And
Hmm.
luckily, it did get over with. It as long as it probably is. I think that one was like a full like 60 minutes, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
long.
it was long. But so miss me with this one too. But the next one, I am 100% unreservedly invested in on board for, and I'm curious what your feelings are because I fucking loved the viewing. The viewing was awesome.
Yeah, it was it's I don't know, interesting because you're interested in what's happening. You don't know what the fuck it, what is happening, what is going on. You have no idea. And that's kind of what strings you along through this because a lot of it is just people sitting in a circle talking and doing drugs and drinking and yeah, it was this thing. It was so out of all of the shorts, the most stylish. It had the best handle on the shorts aesthetic. Like he knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what props to use, and sort of that like 70s aesthetic was incredible. And yeah, I did really like this one. I would say it's a little, a little meandering, but again, I'm starting to kind of sound like a broken record because all that could be said for almost all of these is
Yeah,
they're just too long. And it when it eventually got to the place that it was going, then I was like, okay, I get it now. This is interesting. So
and out of all of them, I would almost say that this almost should have been its own movie. I almost
I can
wish
see
it.
that.
I almost wish that they could have expanded on some of these things a little bit more. But that said, the things that deliver probably deliver because there's nothing else going on. If you know what I mean, like we only have one fucking crazy fucked up sequence in this whole thing, and that's like the last 10 minutes of it or whatever. And
Mhm.
yeah, the rest of it is just really bizarre conversation, some tension. You're not really sure like who these people are, like, and why they're all there. Neither do they. And Peter Weller just gets to go fucking nuts, on space cocaine, and tell Eric Andre that he's harshing his mellow when he starts getting existential about staring into the void. So yeah, and out of all of them, this was like the only original story written for the project, right?
Yeah, I mean, other than is I don't know, is Lot 36, was it written for this
It
or
was
was
a
it one of?
it was a short story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you're probably right then. Yeah.
And I think maybe that's why it has that. Like it had that more realized, you know, encapsulating point of view with its how stylish it is, how committed it was to its aesthetics, and it all pays off. Even by the end when you have that like tentacle creature showing up, and they're all just mind melding with it, and it's so like because yeah, it doesn't really bother explaining anything that happens at that point on. We're just seeing it happen. But what was up with the weed smoke being the thing that woke it up? Like, because they're just looking at a rock, going, "Fuck, man, it's a rock,
Yeah.
space rock. What the fuck, And then he just blows a J smoke into it, and all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I mean, it was well, I mean, first of all, what is your because I think this is probably the most ambiguous one too, like
Mm.
overall. And so what is your interpretation of what is even going on in this one? Like as far as why these people are here
Yeah.
and what they're doing.
See, it reminded me of a Michael Crichton movie or a story because you have this crazy billionaire who's happened upon this, groundbreaking, reality-altering discovery, and he's like, okay, who are the smartest, hippest cats I could get around to show this to, and he picks out, a graduate student who wrote a really wicked, thesis that he, feels is confirmed by his discovery. So, okay, we got to have her. We got to have, we're going to have to write an album about the experience. So we need to have Rick Rubin on hand, or super producer, to get all that together. And we need a guy that writes books for some reason, and then a hacky, ESP fraud, like a psychic guru fraud guy. I don't know why he's there. And I don't even know how real his powers were. But those two characters were just there to be dicks to each other and for exposition purposes. To be like, oh, you don't recognize so-and-so? Well, he's special. But, yeah, I don't know. What was your original question? I got lost in my train of thought.
I was asking what your interpretation was, and that's kind of the similar, wavelength I was kind of interpreting that was he had basically gathered together these people who were sort of either the most well-known people within their field, or trailblazers within their field, and he's just getting them all together to try and figure out what this thing is. But by the end of it, none of it matters. And this kind of goes back to your original question about the weed smoke. Despite the fact that you're getting all these supposedly smart people together, in the end, none of it matters because some pot smoker guy just blows weed smoke at it, and it does the trick basically.
Yeah, it maybe calls to mind, Nope a little bit, because it's just like you don't blow weed smoke in a dog's face. Don't blow weed smoke in the face of some cosmic horror from beyond the stars. That's the first lesson. But if there's anything to glean from what the experience is for the people within it, at the end there's this throwaway line when the two survivors are running away, and Eric Andre is like, "It said we were chosen. What does that mean?" And they just never stopped to consider that. So was this the Ark of the Covenant, and they were all tested, and some were found wanting, so their faces were exploded? That one dude is like, "It's probing me," before it all goes jelly faced. But then the other weird thing that happens, and I'm not sure how to interpret it. It could be one of two things. After Peter Weller is subsumed by the entity when it goes all gooey, and it has a humanoid form, and that guy shows up with the golden AK, it yells, "Help me," before he starts shooting. Is that Peter Weller talking, or is that the entity?
Oh yeah, I guess I would assume it was Peter Weller.
Okay.
Because I forgot how exactly the guy with the AK dies, but
he gets zapped with lightning bolts out of the tentacles.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, I would assume it's Peter Weller then, because he must be sort of crying out from within the entity, but then the entity sort of retakes control and zaps the AK guy.
Okay. Yeah, and then it just walks through a drain pipe next to a city, and God only knows, what fate's going to befall that world when it's all said and done.
Definitely one of the better endings. I really, really like that ending, how it just kind of zooms out, and it's just like a city in the background, and it's very, very slowly coming out, just taking its time. And that was definitely one of the stronger endings.
And just overall, I love the music in this, and and that whole character, that billionaire who's so rich that every experience he has is proprietary. Oh yeah, the architect who built it, you'll never know his name. He only builds for me. The guy that makes the music, he only makes the music for me. That whole, no, I just loved the world, and I was sad to have to leave it behind. I wish it had kept on going. So yeah, very enthusiastic about that one. And the final one, coming to us by Jennifer Kent, right?
Yep.
Yes, is The Murmuring, which really kind of sticks out like a sore thumb because it's more just a proper ghost story, more than anything, versus all the cosmic horror and like creepy ghoulies we have to deal with and all these other ones. But overall, I don't know. I really wasn't sure what to make of this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess personally, I'm kind of tired of Jennifer Kent's shtick. Her sort of like depression dramas masquerading as horror movies. I don't know. I'm over it at this point, and I think I don't know if you've ever seen The Nightingale, but
No.
that movie is like oppressively depressing. Like it's too much, and that's kind of just her thing now. And I don't know. I like the setting of this one. I thought it was kind of cool. It reminded me of actually, the area where I'm at, sort of lakes country, this island in the middle of a lake. And that was mostly it, I guess, because we've seen this sort of story done a million times of sort of a grieving couple that sort of is united by a ghost that reminds them of their dead child, essentially.
Yeah. And they have, some kind of shared occupation that's like, driving the plot around them, and and is part of the, what fuels their conflict over what they're experiencing or not experiencing. But yeah, I just, like, to the extent that I could understand, I did not care. Like you kind of said, it didn't grab me, and ultimately bored. It was where it left me, and it was quite a stark contrast to the high that I had from watching the viewing, and then going to watch, to finishing off with this one. It was kind of a wet fart, and because this is the other one that Del Toro played a part in writing, I believe. This is one of the two episodes, and yet again I expected more. This felt overstuffed with nothing. It's just shots of them like doing their little experiment with like the recordings and talking over walkie-talkies and coordinating stuff. But as far as actual scares, it's like the others is spookier than this whole experience was. And frankly, I might get hate for this. I didn't particularly care for the Babadook. I did not enjoy that movie even a little bit. Neither did I find it scary. I just found that child annoying. I was one of those people who couldn't get past the kid. And that, like, yeah. I just, that's just where I'm at.
I'm sort of the same as you. I mean, definitely overhyped, definitely overrated, the Babadook, and I don't know. I don't really see what a lot of people see in her as a filmmaker, and I was really hoping that, maybe she would do something different with this than what she's known for, because she's having to sort of work within the confines of doing something for somebody else, essentially, instead of, doing her own movie or her own thing. But no, she basically got free reign to just kind of do her sort of shtick, and it's just kind of the same thing as she always does. And it was a strange one to end on. I'm guessing, because it is kind of a downer for a lot of it, and so I don't know what Del Toro was thinking when he chose this one as the final one. My guess is that, this is probably the one that's the most like prestigious, for lack of a better word, or like Oscar baity, for lack of a better word.
All the others are more like schlocky, a little exploitative, like proper weird fiction. And this just kind of came off as a Lifetime movie, or like you say, an Oscar bait, because it's gorgeous. And if there's anything that you like, any like plot that you can give the whole series, they all look really good. They look better than, like, say, the Twilight Zone reboot did. Like, these look like movies, more often, like in the runtime. Granted, they get cheap and and shoddy on occasion, like you pointed out. But in this one, yeah, it's just lots of really heightened filmmaking going on, but it just left me with my eyes glazing over.
Yeah, same. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, where does that leave us with the overall experience? Like if you could have cut 2 out of it completely, and like which ones would you excise from this original run? Because I don't know, like, do you even want a second season of this? I think that's the better question.
Yeah, I would say so. I think, overall it's very worthwhile because, Guillermo del Toro is the only person who could have done this. Guillermo del Toro is like the ambassador between like Hollywood proper and then like weird like horror fiction. He's like the guy championing all of this weird stuff. I mean, we've gotten a look at his personal collection in person, and he's got all this strange all these strange curios and stuff, and it's just like he's the only person who could have wrangled these big directors, because they are big. And I would totally take a second season of this. And if I had my way, I would probably get rid of Dreams of the Witch House, and I don't know, probably just because it was so ridiculously long. I honestly think it was the longest one other than the Murmuring. I would probably get rid of The Outside.
Okay. I would ditch honestly, I would ditch the Outside and Lot 36. I would. Okay. I don't know. Like there's other filmmakers that I would have tried. I know Navarro is in there because he's his boy, but who's somebody that you would have liked to have seen in the lineup, or who do you want to see in the second round of Curiosities if we get one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, there's I don't want to just list off a bunch of VHS people, but there's David Bruckner. A good duo of guys are I can't think of their names off the top of my head, but it's the directing duo that did the latest Scream movie, Scream 5.
Oh.
And before that they did Ready or Not. Did you ever see Ready or Not?
I heard of it. I didn't actually see it though.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett.
Yes. Yeah, they would have been good because the last Scream movie was actually really good. So I guess that off the top of my head, that would be sort of my answers. I mean, if you could, this would never happen in a million years because there are certain directors that are like a tier above that would never like stoop to this level. But what if you could get like a Ari Aster or like a
Robert
like
Eggers?
A Robert Eggers? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think that would ever happen.
Get the It Follows guy.
Yeah, that would be good.
That would be good. And see, those guys are too good. Those guys are gods amongst themselves. At this, in terms of their gravity, like they're suns, and they can't orbit around the biggest sun of them all. We would cause a 3-body problem or something like that.
Yeah, so
that'd be really cool.
But yeah, overall, I mean, very, very worthwhile in my opinion. You could do so much worse than this show. Like you had mentioned earlier, the Twilight Zone reboot was so awful, and it was so like misplaced and just totally did not get the point. And I think this show at least gets the point. It knows what people want, and it executes on it to varying degrees. But I thought the whole thing was at least worthwhile in some way.
Yeah, because it's far from perfect. I concede that, but I am still just super enthusiastic that they did it. I'm not upset, because sometimes, especially with Netflix, they take a swing at something and you're just like, why the fuck are you even bothering? But like we spoke to at the beginning of the show, their enthusiasm for this kind of story, or the Lovecraft himself, is obvious. And even though they, went their own way with a lot of the stories, ultimately you can see the reverence and the respect and their own enthusiasm behind the stories they were telling. So, like, I give them, credit for that. But they really should maybe cut down on the amount of episodes on the second round. Maybe only do 6. Save the money, tighten up the content and the run times a little bit, and then maybe we'll really be in business, and this could be something that we look forward to every year, at the time of year, because I guess we alluded to, it is Halloween today. I don't even have a costume. Do you have any plans after this is over? Are you gonna go have a spooky night?
Not too much, I guess. Just handing out candy, and that's pretty much it. I hope that my doorbell hasn't gone off at all while we've been recording, but it probably could have. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm gonna get my last night in of watching horror movies before we hit November 1st. And
are we gonna get like a wrap up on your horror watching experience?
Like, yeah, I could do that next week. Yeah, my list of stuff that I was gonna watch this October. I will revisit that next week. Yeah, okay. That's a good idea.
Right on. But yeah, that was Cabinet of Curiosities, and yeah, some of it's hit or miss, but it's better than reality TV. I stick to that. It made me glad that I had my Netflix account again, which is not something I thought I was gonna say. But if you had a pick of the week, Matt, like a recommendation to take home, the must watch, like, what was it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I only had 2 things this week, which is probably going to be pretty unusual for me, but I would say between Barbarian and this, I would probably tell you to watch episodes 2, 3, and 2, 3, 5, and 7 of Cabinet of Curiosities, because I think we might have had our
things out of order. Yeah,
things out of order, but that's fine. But yeah, 2, 3, 5, and 7 are the episodes to watch if you're looking at this show on the Netflix home screen.
And I'm just gonna shout out the Autopsy in specific, like watch that one. It was just so well done and so fucked up, and it really grossed me out. It'll gross you out too. But this was from the Mezzanine. We just got done talking about Cabinet of Curiosities. We're back live. Thank you, Cirrus, River Telecommunications, for getting your shit together. I have never experienced such bandwidth, and we'll probably be back to streaming live in the future, unless life and reality doesn't allow it. But if you did tune in live, I did not check the live the chat. I wasn't paying attention to it at all. We weren't ready for it, so I apologize in advance if you showed up and we didn't notice you. But thank you once again, Matt. Sorry for the long recording time, but I'll see you sooner rather than later on Saturday.
Yep. Yeah. See ya.
Have a good night.